This is Rebecca Teasdale with the Embedding Evaluation in Libraries project. And this video focuses on choosing your methods for gathering data when conducting an evaluation in your library. Many evaluations require libraries to gather data from patrons, community members, or employees. The most common methods used to gather these data are surveys, interviews, focus groups, and observations. You'll choose which methods to use based on the type of data you need, the inherent strengths and limitations of the method, and the resources and expertise available to you in your organization. The next 5 videos in this series focus on implementing each of these methods. So once you've chosen which method will best meet your needs, you can view the appropriate video to learn how to get started. Surveys enable evaluators to gather standardized, focused information from a large number of people. You develop a list of mostly closed-ended questions, so that is, the evaluator determines the answer choices. And those questions can focus on attitudes, opinions, factual information, and descriptions of behavior. The goal is to aggregate the survey responses to describe the characteristics of the entire group of respondents, as well as subgroups. Survey responses can be statistically representative, depending on the sampling methods we use. So surveys can be used when you want to make inferences about a larger group of people beyond those who actually take your survey. Survey data are self-reported. That is, the respondents report information about themselves. And this can be a benefit when you seek to understand respondents' perceptions and opinions. But it can also be a limitation if you want to understand respondents' actual behavior. Surveys can be anonymous, which can protect respondents' privacy, and in some cases can result in more trustworthy data because respondents answer more openly and honestly. But you don't have the opportunity to clarify any questions on the survey or ask any follow-up questions. So your instructions and questions need to be very clear and carefully worded. Surveys are also flexible because they can be administered online, in person, by phone, by text message, or through the mail. And they can also be one of the fastest and most cost-effective ways to gather data. Interviews produce a different type of data. They enable you to gather rich, detailed information from a select group of people. You use open-ended questions that are broader and more exploratory than survey questions, because your goal is to get a window into the respondents' experiences and perspectives. Rather than aggregating your data across a large number of people, you're seeking personal, individualized information. And this is done through a one-to-one conversation that allows you to ask follow-up questions and explore new information that emerges. You can conduct interviews in person, over the phone, or through a video call, which provides quite a bit of flexibility. Interviews are time-intensive for both the evaluator and the respondent, so data is typically gathered from a smaller number of people than if you were using surveys. But the data you obtain is more in-depth and detailed. You'll keep the data confidential, but they won't be anonymous because you know the identity of the person you interviewed. You also have the option of conducting group interviews with one evaluator and a group of 6 to 8 respondents. And these interviews are often called focus groups. In some ways, focus groups are very similar to individual interviews because you can gather similar types of information about respondents' experiences and perspectives, and you conduct them through a conversation. However, focus groups are different than individual interviews because the evaluator asks questions that the participants then discuss among themselves. Focus groups are used when you want respondents to build off of one another's ideas and reflect on their own experiences and opinions in light of what others say. Focus groups were developed to reflect the social interaction that are part of people's decision-making in real life. So, for example, when people are deciding whether to buy a consumer product, they usually talk about it with other people and sometimes make the decision jointly with other people. Focus groups are designed to reflect that social interaction. Libraries might want to use focus groups to understand teens' preferences for programs and services. Or you might want to use focus groups to gather data about community needs. Both of these topics would benefit from discussion among the group of participants. As with individual interviews, you'll keep focus group data confidential. And you'll ask the focus group participants to keep the conversation confidential as well. But you aren't able to control whether people repeat what they hear in a focus group, so confidentiality can't be guaranteed. Finally, you can gather data by conducting formal observations. You might conduct an observation to gather data about how patrons navigate your picture book collection. Or you might observe a computer class to gather data about the specific computer skills that participants demonstrate and how those change over the course of the class. Observations enable you to directly witness people's behavior, words, and interactions. And you can also use observations to gather data about a setting to understand what it looks like and sounds like and what activities take place there. For example, you might want to conduct an observation to determine how crowded the teen center is after school, or if there's enough seating in a reading area. Observations allow you to bypass respondents' reporting of information and see firsthand what's taking place. This can be useful because there are some types of information that people don't know or aren't able to articulate, like how they navigate a space, the exact steps they use to complete a process, or their ability to perform a specific task. If they don't know or can't articulate this information, they can't tell you through a survey or an interview. Other times, people's perceptions of their own behavior or interactions may differ from their actual behavior or interactions. Or their perception of the characteristics of a setting may vary from what we see when we visit ourselves. Observations require you to be physically present in a particular setting, so they're less flexible in terms of logistics. And while observations can shed light on what's taking place or how it's unfolding, they usually won't help you understand the reasons that those things are happening. Because each method of data collection has inherent strengths and limitations, they're often combined in an evaluation to develop a complete, well-rounded answer to your evaluation question. For example, you might conduct observations to understand how people use a particular area of the library, and then interview patrons to identify the reasons behind those behaviors. You might also combine methods to improve the quality of the data you gather. For example, you might conduct interviews to help identify the questions to ask and answer choices to provide on a survey. Finally, one factor that typically impacts which data collection methods you select is your organization's capacity, in terms of funding and expertise. As mentioned previously, surveys are often a cost-effective data collection method. But one exception to this is if you need a statistically representative sample, because then you would need to contract with an organization that has expertise in that area. And because high levels of expertise and experience are required to run focus groups effectively, it's typically best to bring in an outside professional for this work, unless someone on your staff has these skills. To learn more about these data collection methods, you can view the videos in this series on surveys, interviews, focus groups, and observations. And for more information about embedding evaluation in your library, visit our website at libraryeval.org.